technical issues.
Let's start. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. The next Wasteless World Talks are here with new term. And this term, again, it's a simple one. And I will start with Kevin because I have him on the top of a screen. Kevin, if you close your eyes and you hear the term law, L-A-W, which came first to your mind?
Actually, another word came to mind instantly, and that was justice. And then I had to ask myself, why are there two separate words for law and justice? And the answer I got is obviously that law has nothing to do with justice.
That's interesting answer. Bill, the same question for you. So close your eyes and the term law. What do you see?
Oh, the first thing that comes to my mind is a book or a set of books that tells the society how to get along with each other. I got mixed inputs. My brother was a police officer, so that brings a side to it. And the other is how the law can be tangled and twisted and used in so many different ways. So I've got very conflicting messages coming into my brain when you say that.
Thank you for that. And Noah, you are the third one. So close your eyes and what do you see?
Yeah, when you mentioned the word, it's interesting. The first thing that came to my mind was civilization, like a civilized society.
You know what is interesting? I don't know whether the expression the law of nature is common in English, but I think it is. But nobody, none of you and nobody in the noon session saw the law of nature. All the time, the first came the law made by man, with all these positives and negatives aspects which are there. But it was quite interesting.
You're right.
That is. Go ahead, Bill.
We keep saying that in our wasteless world that nature does not waste. And we look at nature as a model for so many ways to make things better. So why did our minds not jump to the law of nature right away? Nice catch.
Noah, you would like to say something?
Well, you ask such interesting questions, Michael. The law, I'd like to explore that a little bit. What is the law of nature? Like when I first thought about it, I'm like, well, nature doesn't operate really with I mean, there's some laws of physics that we all operate within because we live in this structure of nature at a atomic and a cosmic level. But law of nature, I think I immediately went to like Darwinism, which is survival of the fittest, which is almost lawless. It's just do whatever you need to do to survive. And I think that most animals do that, so that maybe that law of nature is just so instinctual that it doesn't surface in a cognitive process around the word. It's a very interesting exploration. I'm curious, Michael, why you went to nature as law.
One of the reasons is because the term which I propose all the time, it somehow resonated with me at the time. So this time I wake up with the term law, but in Czech Republic, in Czech language, we use the term law, but slightly differently. So law is a zákon, but as well it is something like a right. You have the right to do something. So this is the law to do something, which we say in Czech. So it's hard to translate. And nature came to it today in the morning. You know, I was riding on my electric unicycle through the night because at 3 a.m. and I saw beautiful images which deliver nature. And I just thought, okay, so is it the law of nature that we see it, that when I change my behavior, I will start to understand, and then I dig inside and the law of nature came to me because it's so it's so different than the laws which we set up. You know, the law of nature, you don't need to read it in books. You just feel it. But we created so many laws that even the lawyers don't know what is written in there. We just add new one and new one. Even you was closer to the law, I think, in your job, in your previous job. So how is there the feeling about it when law is your job and career?
Yeah, I actually studied law, but then never worked in it. But I think that laws, of course, are written down by men to be followed by men. And then, of course, we will write down laws about everything else. So the law of nature. And I don't actually think nature is particularly interested in following the laws that we've given it. I don't think nature, in a way, is the opposite of law. If you think of law as a human construct to be followed, nature simply doesn't need laws. Nature is the opposite of law. It's pure instinct.
I think that it is interesting because one of the laws of nature, you mentioned no other physical laws, but again, the physical laws has been by human somehow defined and so on. I just read a few minutes before we started, I read that Nobel Prize laureate, American professor, he realized that China is overproducing. That's, you know, it's fascinating that a professor who is nominated to the Nobel Prize find out something which was clear to me 11 years ago. So what is the law of this of the process or of the educations and so on? Nature does not need it. You are right. Nature simply does it. And one of the laws of nature is that everything change. And this is the very different from the laws which we set up as humans, because we would like everything to be same. Laws, regulations, standards. This is what seems to be to run the human society. But do we really need it?
When I think, Michael, of the laws of nature, the vision that comes to mind is not of animals, but rather of trees and bushes and so on. I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think we're coming to understand that the trees and the bushes can communicate, right? They can talk to each other. So if an insect or a pest starts attacking on this side of the forest, then through the roots they send electrically or chemically, or I don't know how it happens, something. They send messages so that the others can produce whatever is needed to ward these off. And I'm way oversimplifying it, and I may be totally wrong, but I don't think it's I think there are laws, such as that's an example of we will protect each other. We do. You know where I'm going with that one? It's. I think that we may not understand what the laws are. We may not, as humans, be able to see the laws, but it's not random.
You mentioned at the beginning law and order, two terms generally which should be same but are not. And maybe it is the nature, the order of nature instead of law. I don't know. Noah, what do you think?
Well, Bill, I want to share what I think I know about what you're talking about with plants talking to each other. There are two studies I'm aware of. One of them is plants that communicate to each other via chemicals. Plants, in a greenhouse can communicate from basically leaf to leaf. The other one, which is fascinating to me, is that trees communicate with each other through a network of mycelium in the soil. So it's an interspecies communication between trees.
Is anybody else having trouble hearing Noah?
Yeah. There is the connection, Noah,
I think
is somehow
Noah,
broken.
You're
so
breaking up.
It looks like there is a slow connection or something like that. But right now, if you start to nod, it seems to be fine. So I don't know. No, there is a delay.
Let me try. I'm going to jump to my phone. So just give me a minute here, and I'll switch.
Okay.
Okay.
So I will ask Kevin for his opinion. Is it a law or it is an order of nature?
I think it's an order. I think that if you look at human history, our first laws weren't laws, they were commandments. So we had 10 commandments given to us from God, and we had to follow them. After that came laws, and laws are human to human ways of structuring society. So I don't think nature has no need for law at all, because law is a human to human way of controlling society.
Okay, so we can try. With you, Noah, we can try.
Yeah, is this better?
Yes.
Great. Sorry about that. I was commenting on Bill's observation that plants communicate to each other, and there are two studies there. One are plants seem to be able to communicate through the air, leaf to leaf. And the other, which is even more fascinating, is that trees in a forest seem to be connected through a network of mycelium in the soil. So they're using interspecies communication to manage survival of the forest, and they're able to transfer resources to keep the forest healthy, which is interesting to me because my original thought was that the law of nature is species survival, but in that latter case, the law of nature may be ecosystem survival, right? So the forest is working together to help ensure its health over time, which is far more complex, right? I think that's one of the things that we do with laws, and to Kevin's point, commandments, that they're designed to work for the betterment of a society. And it's kind of a game-changing thought for me to consider natural laws serving a greater good than the individual or the individual species, that natural laws may serve the health of ecosystems and the health of the environment.
That's one of the reasons why generally in Industry 5.0 we break the silos as one of the first steps, because nature is the role model and nature does not have silos. It's one. Somebody call it Gaia and so on. There are many names for the entire planet, and I think it is so. I just read day before yesterday, there is ants, very aggressive ants has been found in Germany. They eat infrastructure, generally they eat cables and similar, they can influence electricity. And what I have learned, that the biggest ants colony, they call it, I think, mega colonies, they can be up to 6,000 kilometers big. 6,000 kilometers, and they can communicate across continents generally. So
thank you. I was thinking the exact same thing. I just did a podcast I will share with you about these mega colonies of ants, and it seems like they came from Argentina originally, and they used the infrastructure of humans to colonize other parts of the world, and they're incredibly aggressive. Their law is they're xenophobic. They fight to win. They do not tolerate other ant species. Other ant species have interbred. So when they sense each other, taste, smell, whatever they do, they will recognize themselves as family or not family. And this group of ants, these Argentinian ants, are so pure that they recognize themselves as family all over the world. So they are able to have these numbers in the, I think this seems like a made up number to me, but I actually think they said in the gazillions of individual ants in these colonies that are all over the planet. And yes, they're in Europe. There's a huge colony in California. They may range, the same colony may range from California to Louisiana in the United States. It's immense. I look forward to sharing that podcast with you because it was incredibly insightful information. But so that law to me, again, goes back to survival, like the natural law. The number one edict is to survive. And maybe that is adaptable based upon the needs of the species. If the species recognizes it needs an ecosystem to survive, it will protect that ecosystem. If the species just recognizes that it needs to conquer to grow and survive, maybe it will do that. And it's kind of fascinating that humans have neglected to either draft or enforce laws that ensure the survival of the species. We're thinking on much more of a micro level than a macro scale.
You know, what is interesting that, and you mentioned it, both of you, that generally there is a interspecies communication and cooperation. Can you imagine that the next speed of internet will be not counted in bytes, but in ants? How many ants do you have? I have 24. Great speed. Because, you know, they do that. And we are trying to fight against, in some way, protecting just one species. And generally, the laws are written by the people who break the laws first. That's even the most craziest part. To write a law, to be the first who break it. This is what the giants do every single day. So it's unbelievable. So can we go without laws? Kevin?
No. I think that the very best thing about laws is that it contains our worst instincts. And if we remove laws, we remove barriers for people who definitely need barriers. And the survival of the fittest may be a mechanic in nature to improve the species, but it certainly doesn't help individuals in society.
Are you the same opinion?
Very well put. Yeah. When you said that, Michael, I thought, if you take away the laws, I'm going to go get a gun, because laws are meant to protect me, which they sometimes do a good job, sometimes they don't. But I need to protect myself. I'm going to get a gun.
You know what was interesting in the noon session, that majority of the people, and we spoke again from 5 continents, majority of people consider the first what they saw in a law when we started discussion was the negative things, not the positive one. So the limitations, the serving one group of people or a special purpose, but there was not a single one which was a positive. That was quite interesting. Then we came to some positives, of course. Yeah, Noah? Sorry.
Yeah, that's very interesting. That the limitations, laws. Yeah, what a fascinating question. So laws are designed, I think, to ensure a functioning society. But at the same time, the way that they're interpreted and administered is at an individual level, right? The law applies to everyone, but it's administered individually. You break the law, you deal with law enforcement, and then a judicial system, right? As an individual. But it's very rare where societies or cultures or infrastructures or industries are held accountable to laws. It does happen in some cases, right? So there are laws applied to, like the EPA, right, enforces environmental laws at an industrial level. But what's incredible is that the EPA in America wasn't created until the early 1970s. So we operated for a very long time without environmental, broad-based, benefiting societal laws. I guess there are labor laws that protect broad classes of people, and there are discrimination laws that protect broad classes of people. But even in those cases, when the laws are enforced, an individual or an individual entity is often targeted, not in a negative way, right? But it's targeted, and that is identified as breaking the law and then brought to trial, where then that law can be adjusted and adapted to then reflect back on society, right? It changes based on interpretation of the courts and ultimately what the lawmakers decide to do, that are influenced by individual examples applicable to the broader whole. Yeah, there's something there I'm not quite wrapping my head around, but it's very interesting the way that mechanic works.
The next thing is, what is interesting, that every country has a different laws. Despite we are all humans, so there are different laws. And even individual cities, or in the US, individual counties, so individual industries have their laws. So we have so many, and we are not able to keep a single one. Kevin, your microphone is...
What you said is so interesting, and I'd like to ask the two Americans, what is the difference between law enforcement and a peace officer? Because by the sounds of things, I would much rather deal with a peace officer.
No, correct me if I'm wrong. There are two words for the same. It's two approaches, I think. What you name the guy in uniform who comes to your door, what you call them, I think, may vary. I happen to like peace officer much better. If there's a family argument, I would rather somebody trained in social interactions show up at my door than somebody with a gun, right? No, are they the same thing?
That's a very interesting question. I think they are the same thing. I think it's a posture or a stance, to your point, Bill, of how they approach the infraction. Disturbing the peace is often a cause for law enforcement to show up. And many police departments across America have a motto that says to serve and protect. And it's interesting. Are we talking about serving and protecting individuals? Are we talking about serving and protecting the law? Are we talking about serving and protecting society, or some perception of civil society? I don't know.
Question. Great question. Yep,
I
great
don't know.
question.
I think there is a term of peacemaker, and this is the man with the gun, isn't it?
Not necessarily. When I hear peacemaker, I think of the person who stands between the two warring parties and says, "Let's talk."
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I'm just going to add to that really quickly, Bill. It's so funny when the word peacemaker just surfaced. The first thing that came to my mind was like the Wild West and a very big gun. You know, like the guy who calms things down at the OK Corral with force.
But it's interesting, you have the attitudes, what is peaceful and what is not peaceful, and a gun can be called a peacemaker. In Europe, we have two kinds of police. We have a police force, like in the UK, or we have a police service, like in most of Scandinavia. And I think it's a really interesting, completely different approach to policing if you're a force or a service.
What do you think the difference is between the two? Is it just posture, like or like we mentioned earlier?
I think so. I think it also it affects the kind of person who wants to join the force or the service.
Right.
I remember I was talking to a Danish policeman, and he said the reason he became a policeman is because he really likes helping people. And I was pretty sure there's not many policemen in the UK who would give that answer.
When we are speaking about the laws, do you know someone who wrote the law? I mean, personally, I know there exist. I know there are lawyers who spend the time to expand and so on, and then present it by someone and so on. But to be honest, it looks like that the laws are not written by humans. Seems like to be
I know.
by giants.
Yeah, I'm good friends. I'm personal friends with several who have been either local politicians or Connecticut state politicians. I've known them for several years. Yeah.
Because I have in a few years ago, I helped, I think he is the senator, or he was the senator of Texas. He tried to push through that the wind turbine blades are not being landfill. And he contacted me and asked me for support. It was too late, but I tried. It was not successful, but I think if he will try again, it will be successful. But I'm not sure if he is still there. But I had yesterday quite interesting discussion with a Green Party member here in Czech Republic because I complained about greenwashing initiative, which is here and generally doing the greenwashing themselves, but they call themselves greenwashing that they are against. So it's exactly that case when the people who should protect do the very opposite thing. And it came to my mind that can we narrow our laws to the laws of nature? I mean, to the system which you described at the beginning. Do you think it will be possible without everyone buying a gun to protect ourselves? What must happen to do that?
I think maybe it's similar in some states in America, but English law is two laws. There's the statute laws, which are written by Parliament. And then there's the older law called the Dane law, which was brought over by the Vikings. And the Dane law should be considered more of a natural law. It's more of a natural kind of justice. So it's quite interesting that we do have half of our laws written in Parliament, and the other half are natural.
Kevin, what does the Dane law say or mean, or where is it used? That's the first I've heard of that.
It means the law from the Danes. So it was brought over by the Vikings. And it is, it's in a way, it's the law of common sense. So, and it is that simple because
Two different laws, right? Common sense and not common sense.
exactly, you won't get common sense out of the British Parliament, but so it is this feeling of natural justice that comes from the Danelaw, which is this Scandinavian Viking invention.
So let me throw something out. Excuse me. I think here in this country, and no, fact check me here. The police, the role of a policeman has been changing. For the last 10 years, there's been a lot of publicity about uh, um, police being too uh, bullying citizens for a minor traffic stop or because of a variety of reasons, race being one of them. And it's my observation, but I've not seen anything written that in fact the police departments across the country are, or at least in my world, number one, there are far fewer traffic stops. It used to be you could get stopped for having a broken tail light on your car, and out in the middle of nowhere, if you are, for some reason, the police officer takes offense at you, or you ask too many questions, or if they look too deeply into your car, they can find lots of things wrong. And so there was violence, instances of violence, which have been in the news, in the media. So my observation is that there are far fewer traffic stops, for example. There are far fewer altercations with police because they have pulled back. They are more onto the service area rather than the enforcement area. And Noah, have you seen or have you observed anything like this?
Before you answer, Noah, we have 4 minutes left.
Okay.
It's just
I'll be super quick with this answer, Bill. I think what's interesting is that when you're talking about that was I was thinking, it's a trope, right? The police officer pulls somebody over on a country road that they want to harass, frankly, and they take their billy club and they break the taillight and they come up to the window and they give a broken taillight. They search the car. I think perhaps, and this is a very interesting kind of convergence of technology, I think perhaps that shift in behavior of law enforcement might have something to do with the fact that they are now they're now wearing body cams, and what they do is being observed. Things are not happening alone on dark, quiet lanes anymore because there's a visual reporting of enforcement behavior.
An alternate explanation could be that society is recognizing that we're just too mean to each other. But I'm hard pressed to believe that, right? I would like to believe that. I would like to believe that the society is evolving to be a better society. But let's talk about that again. That's an interesting topic.
Actually, sorry, Michael. This has been just dancing around in my head since we started this conversation. That there may, and Kevin kind of nailed it with the Dane laws and the Parliament laws. There might be two different sets of laws that we talk about, and people that aren't lawyers talk about them under the same umbrella. But maybe there really are individual laws, civil liberties, and there are societal laws. And it just occurred to me that that's actually the way that our Constitution is written. We have the Constitution, which establishes laws for an orderly society. And then years later, we added the Bill of Rights, which recognized individual laws. So the law in America started with, this is the society we want to construct and how it's going to operate, like an operating manual. And then we realized that wasn't enough. We needed to have a Bill of Rights. We needed to have laws that that are written for individual liberty as well.
I don't know whether you noticed, Bill and Noah, but you do not have the police only, but you have the carpenters right now. I don't know whether you have seen, but a carpenter find out, thanks to using the AirTag, he find out the biggest number of stolen electric equipment for the police generally, 15,000 items worth, I think, $4 million just yesterday. And I saw the public speech of the police officer I think it was in Texas or somewhere. It looks like that the ordinary people will do the police work. So the carpenter will be the one who will find out, and the police just take it and move it to the warehouse. But as you said, Bill, I think that will be one of the discussions which we really need to continue. I don't know whether next week, but because it's less than 1 minute time, I would like to thank all of you. Thank you for being here. It was a really interesting discussion, and let me wish you have a nice time free of waste and wasting in all its forms. Stay safe, be free, and be human. That's important. And see you next week, probably. Bye-bye.
Thanks, gentlemen.
Bye-bye.
Bye.